Alrighty, legends. Of course, we're looking at another concept this week, and this week we're going to do something with conversions of measurements. Hopefully, you're already aware of the good old kilometer measurement, because we've been doing that quite a bit in our length and area and volume. And these measurements here will be quite familiar. We haven't actually worked with liters or grams too much, but look, let's have a look at our learning intention. We are learning to convert from kilograms to grams, liters to milliliters, and kilometers to meters. Now, one thing to really note here is these are the big measurements that we normally use in recipes, in drinking liquid specifically, or measuring liquids, and also in distances to different areas. All of these conversions are exactly the same, okay? I would like you to think about that every time you go for this. All of these conversions are exactly the same. Let's zoom in on the one you're most familiar with, all right? The first one we're gonna have a look at is, of course, the kilometer to meter conversion. So 1 kilometer, we know, is 1,000 meters. I'm going to put it into yellow just here. 1,000 meters is 1 kilometer. So again, to get from 1 kilometer to the meters, you're going to have to times by 1,000. And of course, if you had a meter measurement, you're going to divide by 1,000 to get to that area. All right. So for example, if we had 8 kilometers, we're going to times that by 1,000. And we'll get ourselves to 8,000 meters. And similarly, if we had 400 meters and we wanted to get it into kilometers, we'd have to divide by 1,000, and that 400 meters actually becomes 0.4 kilometers. And that's obviously in terms of moving the decimal point. And we've done a lot of that with regard to multiplying and dividing by 10, 100, and 1,000. When it comes to the same measurements over here in liters and milliliters, we use these normally with drinks or liquids when you're measuring all sorts of liquids specifically, and potentially with gases as well, but overall pretty standard measurement for liquids. We have 1 liter, and to convert it to milliliters, you just have to, as always, when you're going to the smaller measurement, times by 1,000. And when you're going to the bigger measurement, you're dividing by 1,000. All right, it sounds silly because we know that dividing usually makes the number smaller, but we're going to a bigger denomination. But in essence, we're actually making this one a lot bigger because milliliters are, even though they're a smaller measurement, the number that relates to the liters will be bigger. So 1 liter times by 1,000 to get it to milliliters, of course, is 1,000 milliliters. Wait, so that's the same. That's the same as your kilometers. We've already had a look. Yep, kilometers to meters, you're timesing by 1,000. Liters to milliliters, you're timesing by 1,000. I did say at the start of the video they're exactly the same. So let's have a look. Your job, of course, is to predict what this might be. From 1 kilogram to grams, how many do we times by to get it to the gram measurement? Guess what? It's the same again. We're going to multiply by 1,000, and 1 multiplied by 1,000 gives us 1,000 grams. And to get back to the kgs, whenever you've got grams, you're going to have to divide by 1,000. Absolutely. And that will give you the kilogram measurement. So let's say, for example, a recipe has 250 grams. To get ourselves to the kilogram measurement, you're going to have to divide by 1,000. And dividing that by 1,000, 250 becomes 25, becomes 2.5, becomes 0.25. And 0.25 is your answer here. 0.25, or 1/4 of the kilograms. Absolutely spot on. All right, now when it comes to some questions, I'm going to zoom out and work through these questions together. So here are my questions. You can see there that we're going to try and convert between kilometers and meters, liters and milliliters, and kilograms and grams. All right, so I'm going to zoom out a little bit, but a reminder that to get from the big kilometer, the liters and the kilograms, you're going to have to times by 1,000, and to get from the small meters, milliliters and grams, you're going to have to divide by 1,000. So let's first of all go and convert from our kilometers to our meters. We've done that already, so hopefully it won't be too tricky. I can see there that to get from kilometers to meters, I am timesing by 1,000. So a nice easy start here. We're going to times 4 by 1,000, and 4 multiplied by 1,000, of course, is going to be 4,000. Great work. Alrighty, next up we're going to do 2,800 meters. Let's say, for example, we're doing a running race and it's 2,800 meters and we need to convert it to kilometers and work out what that is. Of course, we're dividing by 1,000 this time. So dividing this by 1,000, the decimal point will move 1, 2, and 3. Because we are going to do, oh sorry, my apologies, dividing by 1,000 will go 1, 2, and 3, because it's dividing. You're always starting from where the decimal point is, because the decimal point is not there at the moment. Because you're dividing by 1,000, you're dividing 3 decimal points moves. So 1, 2, 3, and that will leave us with a wonderful measurement of 2.8 kilometers. Apologies about my writing, but you know what I mean. Okay, we're into our liters and milliliters, lots of liquids. Right now I've been given a container that's 1.2 liters in capacity, and we just need to know how much that capacity is in milliliters. So again, this time we're going to times by 1,000, and when we times by 1,000, our decimal point moves 3 times. So it starts here, it goes there, that's 1, now it's 12, that's 2, now it's 120, that's 3, now it's 1,200. 1,200 milliliters. That's a lot of mils. Alrighty, and same deal over here. We're going to go from 4,200 milliliters and convert it to liters. And of course, liters, to get to liters, you're going to have to divide by 1,000. So our decimal point will move 3 times because 1,000 has 3 zeros. Alright, so let's do it. 4,200 milliliters divided by 1,000, we're going to move the decimal point 1, 2, 3, and now if you can see it there, we've got 4.2. These zeros don't really matter because zeros at the end of a number, if they're in the decimal place, won't have any change. So let's do it. It is 4.2 liters. Nice. All right, 2 to go. And again, after this, I'm going to give you 10 conversion questions, and I'll leave this sort of poster up, even though it's not my best work. The grams now, let's say, for example, the recipe is calling for 16 kilograms of flour. That's a lot of flour. Maybe you're baking a lot of cakes. So 16 kilograms. To get us to grams, to work out how many grams we actually need, we're going to have to do the same thing. We're going to have to times by 1,000 to get to grams. So timesing 16 by 1,000, nice and easy. We're just going to add those 3 zeros on and move the 1/6 into the 10,000th and the 10,000 and the 6,000 place. So it becomes 16,000 grams. That's a lot of grams. Alrighty, and finally we're working out the kilograms for 400 grams to get us here. So we're thinking about how many times I have to move the decimal point. Well, I'm going to have to move it 3 times because I've got 3 zeros in this equation, 1,000. And because it's a divide, our decimal point is going to move to the left. So let's move it 1, 2, and 3. So it actually starts here. Well, I imagine a 0 is just here as well. So it's actually 0.4 kilograms. It's not even half a kilogram, 400 grams. Hopefully you will be able to work that out. If you're not sure how to do it, hopefully the poster that I'm going to put up has some indication about what's going on. But there are 10 conversion questions, and fingers crossed that that has helped you solve them. In this instance, try not to use a calculator because it is just moving the decimal point. You're not changing the numbers too much. Good luck, and look forward to seeing your answers ready for Silent Disco this week, and hopefully we're getting some baking very shortly. Thanks, you guys.